was a boys' preparatory school whose teachers were women. They were form mistresses, and the head was a man, the headmaster. So we had one headmaster, Mr Lindemann, and I don't know, 10 women. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, we had to call those women Sir. Deeply weird. Nobody ever believes this, but you ask Gilmore. We should have asked him actually, because he might have been in seeing his mum. He might have just popped out and said, "Yes, David is right," meaning me. We did. And in French lessons, which were, progressively conducted in French, makes a lot more sense than Portuguese, if you're teaching French. When we put our hands up, we were supposed to say "Monsieur, Monsieur," to the French mistress. Madness! The idea, one can only assume, was that sooner or later we would go to the upper school when we were 11, and there'd be brutal, harsh men everywhere, and that we ought to get used to it by training on women, but looking at them as though they were men. That would make the great shock of going from women to men that much more manageable. This was known as the Cambridgeshire High School for Boys. This is the school attended by Roger Waters, who lives nearby. We'll be going there in a moment. It's now the Hills Road Sixth Form College. It used to be a boys' school. They used to wear dark navy blazers and dark blue caps. Storm Ferguson was at the school. Roger Waters, Seamus O'Connell, whose mother was another bohemian and therefore, in my view, very important kind of permitting sort of figure, contributing and supporting the kind of the boys and girls in their emerging new values. Who else? Oh, Andrew Rawlinson, who's talk tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock at Borders you shouldn't miss. Andrew Rawlinson is one of these became spiritual. You may have heard us referring to the great split that occurred in the Cambridge group when Paul Cherrier, a good friend of Paul's and mine, who lives down here. A lot of people lived in this small area. Paul Cherrier, as I hope not to bore you, so I'll get through it quickly because some of you heard this story, was taking LSD. He went to the toilet, he found a book called Yoga and the Bible. He opened it, he discovered that in India there was a guru who would get you off the wheel of reincarnation after 4 incarnations if you were to do the following things: give up meat, give up drink, give up drugs, get married, get your hair cut, get a job, and blend in. And then for 2.5 hours every morning you were supposed to meditate using a particular personal mantra given to you by this guy. This guy wasn't one of these giggling Maharishi guys, he was a respectable guru, as there are many, many of them in India, and nobody thinks it's weird. But it certainly broke our group down the middle, and Syd was sort of marooned across the fence, insofar as I think he was quite interested in the master. Some of us weren't. I am, because genetically speaking I've had my genes tested and there are no spiritual genes in me, which is why I've never had a spiritual experience ever. But don't, please don't try to help me, I'm quite happy with it, because I just don't know what it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like somebody who can't see the colour orange. There's no point telling him, "Oh, it's a great colour," because they don't give a damn. I've come this far without having a spiritual experience, and I'm not looking for one now. And they used to call, because it's the Perse School for Boys that David Gilmore attended, they used to call us the Percy Pigs. And we used to call them, if you'll excuse me for a moment, lapsing into Portuguese, the County Cunts. I don't think the house you're born in makes that much of an impact on you. If you move shortly thereafter, here we go to 183 Hills Road. And they used to live there with several Barrett brothers and Rosemary, now Rosemary Breen, which I don't know if that's true. So, at that point, if he did walk, he would have been walking with his 1,000-yard stare and his tousled hair full of powdered mandrax and black bags under his eyes. He was in a sorry state, where he would have been wearing velvet trousers and a floral jacket. He knew where he needed to be, which is where the only place presumably he felt safe. Emerging from Syd's gravel front yard on a daily morning basis, you would see Dr. Barrett on his upright bicycle, looking very much the eccentric Cambridge Don. They got her out of her trance, and it just shows how silly young people can be. That's all I have to say about that. But in this kind of network of streets, all these lads grew up and lived here for many years.
That was not where he was born. No?
That was the house that he grew up in. The house that he died in we'll come to, yeah. Somewhere along here, a bit further down on the right-hand side, there's no need to stop, Brian. We'll be passing the Charrier house. And it was Paul Charrier who set light to a patron's newspaper in the Kenya Coffee House. As he was reading it, which is like a Magritte image at the time, although from a health and safety point of view, not to be tried. He and Andrew Rawlinson used to compete to see who could get to London in the fastest time. I think Roger's record was 52 minutes, and from his house to London. And they would drive around town at breakneck speed with lightning reflexes. This very cheery woman was very severe in her manner. When you rang her up, she was a bulldog looking after her brother. She was very, very protective, keeping the press off his back. There's a house back there which was also very, very important because it was where Seamus O'Connell lived, just up there on the left. And his mother was another bohemian. She used to read palms. She had headed hair and wore long gypsy-like dresses. Her husband, they were also separated, was a textile muralist, a fairly strange branch of fine art, who lived in Perry Green on the same, and his next door neighbour was Henry Moore, who keeps his sculptures in the garden. Some of them, the big ones that he can't get into the house. Some of them are as big as a house, so you can see the problem. Polishing them must be a shocking business, but I'm sure he pays or paid people to do that. This house back just up there, another relatively ordinary looking house, was a place where people that drank beer went. There was a sort of split between the beer heads and the dope heads. They weren't against each other, and many people straddled both groups. Seamus was a beerhead. If we could go to Syd's Road, please, Brian. Seamus was a beerhead. His mum didn't give a damn what you did. She would read your palms, make you cups of tea and toast, and drunken men would stumble into the house, behaving as if she wasn't there, but not in an unpleasant way. They were respectful.
St Margaret Square.
Thank you. Would you like to get out and stretch your legs?
Rosemary's completely an adult, you might expect to purchase the house, but it must be quite close because the whole point was that she didn't want to live with them. She wanted to be close. And one of many books about this is in 10 years. He was knocking on the door. He didn't see it come to the door with anything. Yes. He says, and the author says, I've got a note for you, which he had from Sam. And Syd just didn't even take it. He didn't even take it. So the guy had to leave it outside. Syd was quite capable of not be, nobody could bully their way in. He wasn't that great. The French journalist did once manage to find the 183 Hills Road address and took a photographer. And so there is a fairly late period photo of Syd looking rather puzzled. Boulder, rather unsexy, rock star, in Cambridge, but that would have worried him because he's as far as that's Jonathan Rosie. He never talked about it, and he didn't want to think about it, didn't remind about it in any way. David Gilmour was careful to make sure that Syd's royalties